So if you're clicking on this video to see who I believe will win out of Alex Pereira versus Jiri Prochazka, you've come to the right place. This video is a full card breakdown of every fight on UFC 303. If you're just here for the main event prediction, timestamps for that fight and every single fight on the card are in the description and the comment section below. Without wasting any more time, let's jump into the first fight of the card, which is Ricky Simón versus Vinicius Oliveira. I'm actually going to go with Ricky Simón to win by either a submission or decision win. I think Ricky Simón should have a wrestling approach in this fight, and he does shoot quite often in his fights, I believe, at least 5 to 6 takedowns over 15 minutes. And I think although Vinicius Oliveira is very dangerous on the feet, he's relatively easy to take down, and he's been taken down and controlled by lesser grapplers than Ricky Simón in his previous fights. Even the guy he knocked out was able to control him in that fight, if I remember correctly. Anyways, I'm going to make this pick rather quick. Just because of that grappling advantage, I think Ricky Simón will be able to control Vinicius Oliveira on the ground and in the grappling exchanges to win this fight. Most likely, like I said, by submission, maybe even specifically by an arm triangle since he's gotten a few of those in his career. Or a decision, of course. Moving on. Tsuruya versus Carlos Hernandez. Alright, I know Carlos Hernandez is a decent sized underdog in this fight, but I'm actually going to go with him to win versus Tsuruya in this fight. I think Carlos is quite a solid striker with decent enough grappling and takedown defense to keep this mostly on the feet and piece up Tsuruya, and I think Carlos is quite a solid striker with decent enough grappling and takedown defense to keep this mostly on the feet, and I don't think Tsuruya's grappling is on the same level as Tatsuro Taira's, who just beat Carlos Hernandez, and I also don't think his stand-up is anywhere near Taira's either, and I think Carlos is just going to have that advantage in this fight and will showcase his UFC experience in this one. You have to remember that Tsuruya has just won the road to the UFC, so he hasn't even been on a real UFC event yet, and now he will be fighting on one of the biggest cards in the company's history, and I think that would affect a lot of 22-year-old young dudes, and we might see him be a bit more tentative out there. I do still worry for Carlos Hernandez since Tsuruya's grappling scrambles and ability to transition can be really good, but I'm just hoping he's able to keep this one standing. I can't guarantee anything, just like any of these predictions that I do, but I feel like Carlos might have quite a bit of success in this matchup. We move on. Andre Arlovski versus Marc-Andre Buday. Man, I was originally going to pick Arlovski for a bit, but I think I will be going with Marc-Andre Buday. I don't like talking bad about fighters, but Buday just doesn't look that good overall for the heavyweight division. I think he should be able to beat Arlovski since I think he will just throw more strikes in this fight than Arlovski at this point in his career. I also think most likely he'll win by decision. I'm not expecting a super exciting fight here unless they really decide to brawl and send someone to the high heavens, but yeah, this is a pretty short prediction. I think Marc-Andre Buday wins. Not the most technical two fellas to jump in the octagon right now. Moving on. Waterson-Gomez versus Gillian Robertson. Quick one. I'm going to go with Gillian Robertson to get this one done. I just think Gillian's a little too dangerous on the ground for someone like Waterson, and even though Michelle does have pretty solid takedown defense, I think it only takes 1 to 2 completed takedowns in my mind to chain into a sub win for Gillian Robertson. If Michelle Waterson can keep this on the feet, she probably wins, but if she can't, it's pretty over in my opinion. So I'll be going with Gillian Robertson, most likely by sub finish. We move on. Payton Talbott versus Yanis Ghemmouri. I'm going to go with Payton Talbott in this matchup. Guys, Talbott is a minus 1600 favorite in this fight. I don't know why he's that much of a favorite, but according to those stats, he should be obliterating this guy inside of 1 round. I honestly don't agree with that, but I also don't disagree, if you know what I mean. I do think he should be a heavy favorite, but not obviously that much. I also do think Talbott will be just too much for Ghemmouri. Payton Talbott has proved himself to be one of the hottest UFC prospects on the rise right now, especially after destroying someone like Cameron Simon the way he did in his last fight. I'm sensing a finish for Payton Talbott on the feet just because of his overwhelming striking advantage, and yeah, and I'm going to call maybe a first or second round finish is the most likely, locking in Payton Talbott to win this fight. We move on. Charles Jourdain versus Gene Silva. I think I'm going to go with Gene Silva to win this fight. I was originally thinking of picking Charles Jourdain to win a decision here because I believed his level of competition was better, and I was envisioning him staying on the outside and edging out a decision on the feet. I changed my mind, and mind you, this is still a very close pick, but I believe that Gene Silva can mix in some takedowns throughout this fight, and he can win this by decision pretty comfortably if he does so. I don't think that Charles has the best takedown defense in my opinion, and I think Gene Silva is explosive enough to take advantage of it and entry into a double and a single leg at least 3 to 4 times in this fight. If he does this, and takes a slightly more grappling approach in this fight, I think it would be the easiest way to victory for him, since Jourdain is really hard to beat on the feet. Jourdain's not going to be like Weston Wilson on the feet, who was Gene Silva's last opponent, who really just was waiting to be KO'd in that matchup and relying on his subs only. Close one, but I'm going to pick Gene Silva in this one, and we move on. Cub Swanson versus Andre Fili. I'm going to go with Andre Fili in this fight. Man, if this was a younger Cub Swanson, I think I'd be picking him to win this fight, but I just don't think I can comfortably pick someone that is 41 years of age to win in the lower weight classes, unless you show me performances similar to maybe someone like Jose Aldo in the later half of your career. Not saying Aldo is 41, but he's older and will be 38 soon, so it's a pretty decent comparison, I think. Fili's super quick. He's got great power, willing to move in and out, and I just favor his output in comparison to Cub Swanson's in this fight. My only worry is that he may be coming back a bit too soon from his KO loss to Dan Ige. He really did get flatlined in that matchup, and it was only 4 months ago. I'm still going to go with him to edge out a win in this fight, but it's definitely a close one. We move on. Joe Pyfer versus Marc-Andre Barriault. I'm going to go with Joe Pyfer in this matchup. I know I was seeing fraud check videos of Pyfer losing to Jack Hermanson for a while, but he's still a dangerous dude with massive power in his hands, and this matchup is a lot more favorable for him than someone like Jack Hermanson, who's very light in his feet, who sticks at range and pieces you up from the outside. Marc-Andre Barriault is great, don't get me wrong, but he's a different type of fighter in general, and the man eventually loves to get in close to do his damage, and I don't think that'll be good for him against someone as powerful and as sharp as Pyfer. I can see Pyfer finishing him potentially in the first or second round. Sometimes Barriault does stay at range for a bit, but it's more of a feeling out period for him before he blitzes in and has a close range exchange. Pyfer should win this, pretty confident in this one, and if he doesn't, it's not going to be a good day for him on the internet after this one. So everyone clowned on him last time he lost. It ain't going to be good for the man. Picking Pyfer to win this one, most likely by early rounds finish, and we move on. Onto the main card, Ian Machado Garry versus Michael Venom Page. Guys, razor close fight to decide on, but I'm going to go with Michael Venom Page to get this one done, potentially even to finish Ian Garry in this fight. The reason this fight is so close is because both guys have fantastic striking and have a unique style that revolves around a lot of footwork, and I don't think any of these guys have versed someone even close to their opponent's styles. Ian will definitely be the one to factor in more kicks to the legs and body of MVP, which I thought would be the largest problem for him going into this fight, and a perfect strategy against someone like MVP who stands so bladed to his opponents. But I just think MVP will be a lot faster than Ian Garry will be expecting, a lot faster darting in than any of his previous opponents. I think that in this fight, both guys will take some damage most likely, and there'll be a few messy exchanges, and I'm not sure that if Ian is able to take MVP's best strikes, especially early in this fight when he hasn't calculated the distance properly. Don't get me wrong, this is almost equally as dangerous for someone like MVP who has his chin out there and is decently exposed in these bouts. I'm also worried that with Ian Garry's style that this may end up just being a boring fight, since against dangerous opponents he tends to keep a distance and hit them with some stick and move style of fighting, but with a lower volume. In the end, it'll be an interesting one to find out what the outcome will be. Could be an Ian Garry masterclass for all we know, but I'm locking in MVP to get this one done. Moving on. Mayra Bueno Silva versus Macy Chiasson. I'm going to go with Mayra Bueno Silva to get this one done. I just think she's the more technical fighter and she has more weapons to utilize than someone like Macy Chiasson. I believe she could win a decision, sub or TKO in this fight, and I only see Macy Chiasson getting a decision win potentially by slightly outpointing Mayra Bueno Silva. Macy Chiasson also just is way too hittable. She really doesn't move her head in the slightest when people decide to engage and close the distance, which I really don't like when you're trying to fight another individual. Short prediction, Mayra Bueno Silva wins this fight most likely, maybe by sub. We move on. Anthony Smith versus Roman Dolidze. I'm going to go with Anthony Smith. I think this one's a bit strange since both guys took this fight on short notice, but Dolidze took this one on even shorter notice since he replaced Allberg. When he pulled out, I think Smith replaced Khalil or Jamal Hill when he pulled out of this fight. Look, this fight's happening at 205 pounds. Roman's a middleweight, moving up to fight a light heavyweight that has contended for the belt before. His best win is Jack Hermanson, which is a solid win, but apart from that, he's on a 2-fight losing streak, having lost to Vettori and Imavov, and he doesn't have any other credible wins besides the Hermanson one I mentioned. I'm mainly picking Smith because I believe he's the better fighter overall. He's got a lot more tools to work with than Dolidze. Anthony Smith looked actually quite decent in his last fight with Khalil Roundtree before being finished in the 3rd round. Like I mentioned earlier as well, he'll also be fighting in his division against someone moving up, most likely with a lot of extra fat on them since they weren't as well prepared to climb to 205 since of the short notice. He should be able to outdo Roman on the feet and potentially finish him within 3 rounds of this fight. I think it'll most likely be a decision, but he could get a finish, locking in Anthony Smith to win this one. I'm moving on. Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopez. I'm going to go with Diego Lopez by finish in the first or second round in this fight. TKO or submission. I've been quite high on Diego Lopez as a prospect right around the time I watched him lose to Movsar Evloev. I thought he looked fantastic in that fight on short notice, and I thought he looked very dangerous, and I thought he would be a problem as well for other fighters in that division with a full training camp. Since then, he's gone on to destroy his last 3 opponents in the first round, mixing in submissions and KOs. The guy's a problem. His style seems like a terrible matchup for Ortega. I just don't know how Ortega's going to withstand the early onslaught in this fight, and I think we are going to see a finish where he gets wobbled, falls over bad, the ref steps in. For some reason, I can see this happening. The only thing that could be really dangerous for Diego Lopez is that he might start to gas out, and if he can't put Ortega away in the early rounds, that could be enough for Ortega to take over in the later half of this fight. But is he going to survive the early damage? I'm not sure he can. I'm locking in Diego Lopez by finishing this fight. We move on to the main event, Alex Pereira versus Jiri Prochazka. Man, I'm really going to do it. I'm going to go with Jiri Prochazka to finish Alex Pereira in this fight to set up the trilogy between them. I've been thinking about this for a long while now, trying to decide who I would pick in this bout. I genuinely still believe this fight is razor close and the technical stand-up side favors Pereira, but I just think that Jiri can get this fight done, and specifically because of a few factors that I will list right now. So factor number 1, Jiri's comeback fight after his very long layoff was literally a title bout against Alex Pereira. I can't imagine a harder matchup for the guy besides maybe Ankalaev, since he would have the grappling advantage. And the injury that he sustained before his comeback that caused his very long layoff was a super horrific shoulder injury that required an extensive surgery. I can only imagine how that must have affected him going into this fight. I can only imagine how that may have affected him going into this bout. Point number 2, if you watch back their previous fight that they had, I know Alex won via second round finish. It was a bit of an early stoppage as well, but it still counts. Regardless, Jiri was sort of cooking Pereira. He was winning almost every exchange, won the first round, mixing in the strikes with the takedown as well. Honestly, if a couple more shots that Jiri threw in that fight landed a bit more cleanly, I believe he could have finished him in their first fight. Pereira was destroying Jiri's leg a lot in their first engagement, which should be mentioned for sure, but apart from some really nice leg kicks, mostly everything was going Jiri's way, besides the last exchange, of course. The third factor that I'm going to list here is that I don't think that Alex will look as fast, strong, or sharp in this fight compared to Jiri, since I believe Alex has been going around doing a lot of meet and greets and fan shows. I'm Australian. I know Alex has been visiting Australia recently, and there have been plenty of videos of him in his expensive supercars with a bunch of fans as well, just having a good time. Love it, of course, but I think his training would have taken a little hit at the very least. And I believe someone like Jiri would have been training the day after his Rakic win, I'll be honest. Jokes aside, I know this last point is a bit of a funny one, but I definitely think being in Australia, holidaying around, and trying to prep yourself for a fight that was taken on 3 weeks' notice will take an effect on his performance. Before I started this YouTube channel, I did think that Alex would win their first engagement, and I thought he would beat him again, but I've only changed my mind as of recently, and a full camp, full preparation for the rematch, I believe that Alex would take this one, but it'd be close as well. Not going to back out on my prediction now. Jiri Prochazka finishes Alex Pereira in their rematch and sets up the trilogy. Thanks for watching, guys. Let me know what you thought of these predictions. Did you agree, disagree? Leave a comment in the comment section. Anyways, take care and see you guys next time.